In this video, we will show you how to replace your vehicle's starter on this Dodge Ram 1500 with a 5.2-liter engine. This will be mounted to the driver's side of your transmission. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we need to do is start disconnecting the negative battery terminal. To disconnect the negative battery terminal, you're going to find that you have a 13mm mounting nut. Go ahead and loosen that just enough that you can remove the terminal end from the battery. A quick inspection of the terminal end. We will have to clean this. We'll set that aside temporarily. Now from under here, we're on the driver's side of the engine and transmission. The starter itself is actually bolted to the front of the transmission housing. As for the mounting hardware for this, you're going to find that you have a mounting nut down along the bottom and you have a mounting bolt up along the top. For the top bolt, I'll be using a 16mm with an extension. There's that mounting bolt. A quick inspection. If it looks like it's rusted or rotted or damaged in any way, just go ahead and replace it. This looks fine. Let's continue on to the next mounting nut. For my hardware, I'll be using an 18mm down here. We have the hardware out of here. You should be able to take hold of it, rock it around a little bit, and pull it out of place. Pulling it straight forward. Now keep in mind there is still wiring harnesses attached to along the top of this. For the smaller wire, it looks as though somebody's already changed this out, but typically it's an electrical connector that you can grab on the locking tab and pull out of place. This one I'm just going to wiggle it, and there it is. A quick inspection will set that aside. For the larger wire, I'm using a 12mm. Now that we have that off of there, we can remove our wire from the starter. Just wiggle it around, slide it off. There it is, friend. Now with the starter out of position, before we install the brand new one, we have to do a little bit of cleaning. We'll start with the base along this transmission plate here. We want to make sure we have a clean mating surface so when we install the starter, it'll be seated properly. Use a wire brush for this if necessary. You can also use some parts cleaner, but you don't necessarily need to get anything inside of this transmission area. Now let's pay attention to our wiring. We'll start with the larger wire here. We want to make sure we have good contact points so we have good current making its way through. You can use a wire brush, some sandpaper, whatever you need. Just make sure there's no buildup or corrosion. We're going to continue looking at the wiring harness. If you were to look at your brand new starter, you may find that you have to change out your terminal end on the small ignition wire here. Now, if that's the case, it's fairly simple overall, but of course you will want to make sure you have the proper terminal end. We'll go ahead and trim this off. We'll remove some of the outer sheathing here. Once you have that off of there, you want to inspect the wiring, confirm you don't see any funny colors. That would be corrosion, and you definitely want to either clean that up or just trim back a little bit further. This one looks fine, so I'm just going to take the wire and I'm going to give it a little twist down here. Continuing from there, I'm going to use some heat shrink. We have our brand new terminal end. I'm going to slide it through so we can see the wiring. When you do crimp this, you want to make sure you're crimping on the metal portion of the wire, not on the outer sheathing. Otherwise, you won't have contact. Continuing on, I'm going to squeeze this down, crimping it in place. We'll just give that a nice hard tug. If it feels like it wiggles around, you need to go ahead and crimp it a little bit harder. If it still wiggles around, replace the terminal end and try again. That feels good. We'll continue on with the heat shrink. I'm going to bring it up and over this area, preventing water from making its way in, causing corrosion. Just carefully squeeze this in, it can be hot. A quick inspection, this looks perfect. We can continue on. After dealing with the wiring, we can continue on to installing the brand new starter. When installing the starter, I like to start with the wiring harnesses. You can start with whichever one you want. Essentially, once you get it on there, start on the mounting nut, bottom it out, and then snug it up. You don't want to over tighten it, you could break the studs leading into the starter. Also, when you're putting on the wiring, you want to make sure you have it so the wiring's facing in the proper direction. Let me get this one on here. Okay, so right there is bottomed out. We're just going to take it a tiny bit further there. Like I said, we do not want to break this, but we do want to make sure we have a good contact here. Now it's time for the larger wire. It's the power wire leading to the starter. Just get that right on there. Once again, we're starting on the mounting nut. We'll snug it up. Something important is to make sure that these two terminals are not touching. Once it's bottomed out, just a tiny bit further there, confirming the two terminal ends are not touching in any way, we can install this, mounting it to the transmission. As we bring this up into position, we'll be extremely careful for our wiring harnesses. We're going to align our lower stud. Start that nut on there. We are not going to tighten this yet. Now that I have this one started on, and I'm sure the starter will not fall down, we'll continue on to the upper piece of mounting hardware. We're going to start that in as well, and then we can snug up both pieces of hardware. Now we can get that upper piece of hardware in there. This one can be a little bit difficult to reach. There we are. The torque for each of these is 50 foot-pounds. One last quick inspection while we're under the vehicle, confirming everything's properly tightened and torqued. After that, you can make your way out from under the vehicle and we'll meet in the engine compartment. Now it's time for that negative terminal end. We'll bring this over and slide it right along the top of the battery terminal. Press it down onto the battery as far as possible and tighten the 13mm nut. Double check, making sure each one of these is properly secured. Okay friend, we finished the installation of our starter. The next thing you want to do is hop in the passenger compartment and attempt to start the vehicle a few times. We're confirming the starter functions as it should. After that, you can go ahead and close the hood and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.